It was a normal afternoon, the kind of day when the sun was warm but not too hot, and the streets had that quiet hum of people going about their routines. The teen was walking home from school, earbuds in, music playing softly, enjoying the feeling of the day winding down. He had his backpack slung over one shoulder and a small smile on his face, because he was looking forward to hanging out with his friends later. Everything seemed ordinary, peaceful even, but life has a way of changing in an instant, and he was about to find that out. As he turned the corner near the park, he noticed a police car slowly pulling up beside him. At first he didn't think much of it. Sometimes the police patrolled the neighborhood, making sure everyone was safe. But then the car stopped, and two officers stepped out. They didn't smile. They didn't wave. Their expressions were serious, professional, and somehow tense. The teen's heart skipped a beat. He had never been in trouble with the law before. He kept his hands visible and tried to stay calm, but his stomach twisted with anxiety. One of the officers walked closer and asked him some questions. The questions seemed routine at first, but there was a tone in the officer's voice that made it clear this was more than just a friendly chat. "Do you live around here?" the officer asked. The teen nodded, trying to sound calm, but his voice came out a little higher than he wanted. "Were you just at the park?" another officer added, looking around as if expecting someone to answer. The teen explained he had been walking home from school, nothing more. He mentioned the usual things teenagers say, trying to be polite and cooperative. He didn't raise his voice, didn't argue. He simply wanted the officers to understand he hadn't done anything wrong, but the officers weren't convinced. They continued to ask more questions, more specific this time, and the teen began to feel trapped. Every answer seemed to lead to another question, and every question seemed to make the officers more suspicious. People started noticing the small crowd forming on the sidewalk. Neighbors peeked from windows, and a few people paused on their way home, curious about what was happening. The teen felt all eyes on him, and the weight of their stares made him even more nervous. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He reminded himself to stay calm, to not say anything that could make the situation worse. His mind raced. What could he do to make them understand? How could he convince them he wasn't involved in anything suspicious? He knew that staying quiet or arguing would not help. He needed someone who could help, someone who could step in and explain things properly. And then he remembered. He reached for his phone in his pocket, his fingers shaking slightly. He typed a quick message and then made a call. "Mom," he said quietly when she answered. I'm being questioned by the police. I don't know why. Can you come?" His voice wavered just a little, but he tried to sound calm. On the other end, the mother's voice was steady, calm, and immediately reassuring. She asked a few questions, quickly understanding the situation from his side of the story. Without hesitation, she told him to stay calm, to keep his hands visible, and not to panic. Then she said something that made him feel a small wave of relief. "I'm on my way. Don't worry, I'll handle this." While the teen waited, he tried to remember everything he had learned in school about dealing with authority. Breathe, stay calm, be polite, keep your hands where they can see them. He repeated these steps to himself, trying to steady his nerves. He watched the officers as they talked quietly between themselves, occasionally glancing at him with curious expressions. He couldn't tell if they were frustrated, confused, or just cautious. Time seemed to stretch. Every second felt longer than the last. The teen noticed a little boy on a bicycle watching from across the street, a woman holding groceries staring from her doorstep, and an elderly man on the porch shaking his head slightly. Their attention made the situation feel even heavier, but it also reminded him that he needed to stay composed. The teen's thoughts drifted for a moment. He wondered why this had happened. Why had the police decided to question him? He had never caused trouble, never been involved in anything serious, and had always followed the rules. But as he looked at the officers' faces, he realized that sometimes people make mistakes, or sometimes misunderstandings happen. He just needed someone who could explain things correctly. Someone who could show them the truth. Then a quiet hum of a car approaching made him look up. It wasn't just any car. He knew the sound. It was her. His mother. The teen's heart raced again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was relief mixed with a sense of hope. He could feel the tension in his shoulders ease just a little, knowing she was coming. The officers didn't notice the car yet. They were still focused on him, still questioning, still trying to figure out the story. But soon, everything was about to change. The teen could feel it in his bones. The arrival of his mother would shift the balance, and the uncertainty he had been feeling would start to fade. He stayed where he was, hands visible, keeping his voice steady if they spoke to him again. He watched the street, waiting for her to appear. In his mind, he replayed every instruction she had given him, every word meant to keep him safe. And then, in the distance, he saw her. She was walking quickly, confidently, and there was an aura about her that immediately drew attention. People nearby paused, some whispering, sensing that something important was happening. The teen took a deep breath. He didn't know exactly how the officers would react when she arrived, but he knew she had the skills and experience to handle it. For the first time since the questioning began, he felt a small spark of calm. He realized that sometimes, even when situations seem scary or unfair, there is someone who can step in, someone who can protect you and make things right. And in that moment, waiting for his mother to reach him, he felt that he was not alone. The fear and confusion that had been clouding his mind began to lift, replaced by trust and hope. He didn't yet know how the rest of this encounter would unfold. But he knew one thing for certain. Everything was about to change the moment she arrived. The mother's car came to a smooth stop, a few meters away from where the teen was being questioned. She stepped out with purpose, moving quickly, but without any sign of panic. Her presence immediately caught the attention of bystanders. People on the street paused in mid-step, some whispering quietly to one another, sensing that something serious was about to happen. She did not rush recklessly, nor did she raise her voice. Instead, every step she took radiated confidence and calm. A quiet command of the situation that demanded attention without needing to say a word. The teen, still standing near the officers, felt a surge of relief wash over him. He could see the focus in her eyes, the sharpness of her expression, and the certainty in her movements. In that moment, he knew everything would be all right, even if he didn't fully understand what would happen next. Her presence alone gave him strength. The officers, however, were the first to notice her. Their expressions changed almost instantly, subtle at first, but gradually becoming more pronounced. They whispered to each other, glancing back at her, unsure of how to respond. There was a brief pause in their conversation, a silent recognition that the dynamics of the situation were shifting. They had been questioning a teenager moments ago, unsure and in control, and now a new authoritative figure had entered the scene. Changing everything as she approached, she did not speak immediately. Her eyes scanned the surroundings, taking in the small crowd of neighbors, the officers, and her son. She assessed the situation quickly, noting the body language of the police officers, the position of her son, and the general atmosphere of tension that hung in the air. Every detail mattered. Her training and experience allowed her to process it all within seconds. Preparing her to act efficiently and decisively, the teen tried to stand straighter, wanting to appear composed, but he could feel his nerves. His hands were still visible, and he occasionally glanced at the officers, unsure of how they would react now. He knew the presence of his mother would change things, but he didn't know exactly how. Would they listen? Would they respond respectfully? His mind raced with questions, but he tried to remain calm, following the advice she had given him over the phone. Finally, she spoke, her voice firm but calm. "Officers," she began, holding up her badge, "I am a federal officer, and I am here to ensure this situation is handled properly." Her tone was measured, professional, and carried an unmistakable authority. The officers' expressions shifted noticeably. Confusion, surprise, and a hint of unease crossed their faces. They had expected a routine encounter, a straightforward questioning of a teenager. They had not expected this. The small crowd around them started to murmur quietly, sensing the tension in the air. Some people stepped back, giving her space, while others watched curiously. The teen felt a wave of reassurance. He could see how the officer's body language changed almost instantly. They became more cautious, more respectful, and even a little uncertain. The power dynamic that had been in their favor was now clearly shifting. She continued, explaining the situation briefly and clearly. Her words were precise, leaving no room for misunderstanding. She clarified that her son was a student, had done nothing wrong, and that this questioning was based on a misunderstanding. She spoke not with anger, but with confidence and authority. The officers listened, nodding slightly. Absorbing the information and adjusting their approach, the teen watched all of this unfold, feeling a mixture of pride and relief. He had always known his mother was capable, but seeing her in action, handling the situation so effortlessly, gave him a new level of respect and admiration. He realized that her training, her experience, and her calm under pressure were more than just skills. They were a presence that could change how people behaved and how situations resolved. One of the officers finally spoke, his voice more measured than before. "We understand," he said, a hint of respect in his tone. "We just wanted to clarify what was happening." His colleague nodded in agreement, and together they began to step back slightly. Allowing the mother to take the lead, she did not immediately demand answers or make accusations. Instead, she guided the conversation, asking for details calmly, listening carefully, and ensuring that everyone involved understood the facts. Her approach was methodical, professional, and highly effective. The officers who had been in control moments ago were now cooperating fully. Realizing that any unnecessary confrontation could be avoided, the teen could feel the tension in his chest gradually easing. The fear and uncertainty that had gripped him earlier was slowly being replaced by a sense of safety. He realized how quickly things could have gone wrong if she hadn't been there. The presence of someone who knew how to handle high-pressure situations made all the difference. As the conversation continued, neighbors watched with interest. Some whispered among themselves about the professionalism and calm of the mother. Others admired the way she managed the situation without raising her voice or causing unnecessary alarm. The teen felt a sense of pride in seeing how effectively she commanded respect while maintaining control. Finally, after a few more moments, the officers seemed satisfied. Their expressions had softened, their posture more relaxed. They began to step back fully, acknowledging that the misunderstanding had been cleared up. The mother turned to her son, giving him a reassuring nod. He smiled, feeling a wave of gratitude and relief. The ordeal that had started so suddenly and seemed so threatening was now under control, all because she had arrived at exactly the right moment. The teen realized something important in that moment. Life can be unpredictable, and situations can become tense without warning. But having someone knowledgeable, experienced, and calm can make all the difference. He had felt fear and uncertainty, but now he felt a sense of security he hadn't experienced before. He had seen firsthand how presence, authority, and calm decision-making could change the course of events in an instant. The officers now spoke with the mother, clarifying any remaining questions. Their tone was respectful, cooperative, and even a little cautious, as if they were aware of the expertise she brought to the scene. The teen listened, absorbing every word, feeling increasingly safe and reassured. The crowd of onlookers began to disperse slowly, their curiosity satisfied and their respect quietly evident, as the mother finally turned her attention fully to her son. The teen felt a mixture of relief, admiration, and gratitude. He knew the experience had been intense, even frightening, but he also knew that having her by his side had made all the difference. He understood that while misunderstandings happen, the right presence can turn fear into safety, confusion into clarity, and uncertainty into reassurance. In that moment, standing on the quiet street where moments ago tension had ruled, the teen realized that the bond he shared with his mother was stronger than ever. Her intervention had not only resolved the immediate problem, but it had also taught him an important lesson: that calmness, experience, and authority could overcome fear, and that support from someone who truly cares can make the most difficult situations manageable. He took a deep breath, finally letting go of the lingering anxiety, and looked at her with a smile. She returned it with a calm, reassuring nod. The officers, now fully aware of the situation and the mother's authority, stepped aside, allowing her and her son to walk away without further tension. The street, once tense and uncertain, returned to its quiet rhythm, the echoes of the encounter leaving a lasting impression on everyone who had witnessed it. The moment the mother stepped fully into the space between her son and the officers, the atmosphere shifted in a way that was almost palpable. The crowd that had gathered nearby instinctively took a step back, giving her room, sensing without knowing why that she carried authority. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't gesture wildly, and yet the presence she exuded was enough to demand attention. Her eyes met the officers, steady, calm, unyielding. The teen watched her closely, feeling a mixture of awe and relief. He had known she was capable, but seeing her now in action was entirely different. Her body language alone communicated confidence and control. He noticed the way she stood tall, shoulders squared, her head held high. Her calm voice and measured steps contrasted sharply with the tension that had gripped him just moments ago. The lead officer cleared his throat, clearly trying to regain some sense of authority. But his words lacked the force they had before. "Ma'am, we were just trying to clarify," he began, but the mother cut him off, not aggressively, but with a calm command that left no room for misunderstanding. "I understand that," she said, her tone steady, "but I need to make sure this is handled properly. My son is a student. He has done nothing wrong. And this questioning seems to be based on a misunderstanding." She held up her badge briefly, not as a threat, but as a clear symbol of her authority and experience. The officers exchanged glances, their initial confidence replaced with a hint of uncertainty. The teen could feel the tension slowly shifting. He had been anxious, scared even, but now he could see the officers taking cues from his mother. Every subtle gesture she made seemed to influence them. They listened more carefully, nodded slightly when she spoke, and began to step back in a way that acknowledged her authority. She spoke again, explaining in calm detail what had happened from her son's perspective. She made sure to clarify each point clearly, emphasizing facts rather than emotions. She didn't accuse or belittle anyone. She simply presented the truth with precision. The officers nodded, listening, adjusting their approach as they processed the new information. The teen felt a strange mix of emotions: relief, pride, and even a touch of amazement. He realized that her ability to manage the situation came not from force or intimidation, but from experience, confidence, and a clear understanding of how to communicate effectively under pressure. He began to understand, in a real way, how important calm leadership can be in tense situations. Meanwhile, the small crowd of onlookers continued to watch quietly. Some whispered to each other, commenting on the way she handled the situation, how calm and professional she appeared. Others stepped back even further, sensing that this was a serious matter being resolved with skill and authority. The teen could feel their attention, but chose to focus on his mother and the officers. Knowing that everything depended on how the next few minutes unfolded, the lead officer finally spoke again, his voice quieter, more measured. "We just wanted to ensure that nothing suspicious was happening," he said. "We weren't aware of the circumstances." The mother nodded, acknowledging his point without dismissing it. "I understand your role," she replied. "But now that you have the full information, I trust you can handle this appropriately without further confusion. My son is safe, and there is no threat here." Her calm authority made the officers visibly reconsider their previous assumptions. The teen noticed small changes in their body language. The officers were no longer leaning forward, no longer talking over him or showing impatience. Their hands, once restless or tense, were now at their sides. The shift in tone and posture was subtle, but he could see it clearly. He realized how much influence his mother's demeanor had on the situation. As the conversation continued, she asked a few clarifying questions, making sure that the misunderstanding was fully addressed. She spoke carefully, not to intimidate, but to ensure clarity. The officers responded, providing details and answering her questions. The interaction, while tense at first, began to feel more like a professional discussion than a confrontation. The teen felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. He realized how lucky he was that she had been there, that she knew exactly what to do, and that her calm, strategic approach had turned a frightening situation into one that could be resolved safely. He thought about how easily things could have gone wrong if she hadn't been present. From the crowd, some people began whispering quietly, noting the professionalism and composure she displayed. They could sense that she was not only skilled but deeply experienced. Her calm approach diffused tension and ensured that the situation would not escalate unnecessarily. The teen felt a sense of pride, seeing her handle everything with such grace and authority at one point. The officers paused, clearly reassessing the situation. They consulted quietly, exchanging brief words while keeping one eye on the mother. She remained focused, giving them space to process while maintaining control over the situation. She didn't rush, didn't pressure them, but her presence alone was enough to guide the encounter toward a positive resolution. The teen noticed that his own breathing had started to slow. The knot of fear in his chest had loosened, replaced with a sense of calm. He realized that even though he had felt powerless earlier, the arrival of someone experienced and confident could completely change the dynamics. He had watched tension and uncertainty turn into cooperation and understanding within minutes. The mother turned her attention to her son briefly, giving him a reassuring glance. That small gesture reminded him that he was not alone, that she had everything under control. He felt a deep sense of relief, knowing that no matter what had happened, she was there to protect him and ensure that things would be handled correctly. Finally, the officers began to acknowledge the situation fully. Their tone had softened, their posture relaxed further, and they were now responding to her guidance rather than attempting to assert authority over her son. The mother carefully outlined the remaining steps, ensuring that all questions were answered and that the teen would not face unnecessary scrutiny. Throughout this part of the encounter, Teen observed everything closely. He noticed how professionalism, calmness, and authority could completely shift the outcome of a stressful situation. He realized that fear and tension could be managed, that misunderstandings could be resolved, and that having someone knowledgeable and experienced could make a world of difference. The street, which had felt heavy and tense moments before, now seemed to breathe with relief. The officers were no longer focused solely on the teen. The crowd was beginning to relax, and the mother had successfully guided the encounter to a point of understanding and cooperation. The teen felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. He looked at his mother, understanding more than ever the value of calm, experienced guidance. Her presence had not only resolved the misunderstanding, but it also taught him an invaluable lesson about how to handle stress, authority, and uncertainty. By the time the encounter was fully winding down, the mother had ensured that the officers were aware of the facts, that her son was safe, and that the situation was clearly understood by everyone involved. She gave one final, reassuring glance to her son before allowing him to step forward. Free from the tension that had gripped him just minutes earlier, the teen realized that what had started as a frightening, confusing experience had transformed into a powerful lesson in calm leadership, authority, and trust. He knew that he would carry this memory with him for years, remembering not only the fear and uncertainty, but also the relief, security, and pride he felt because of his mother's presence and guidance as they began to walk away from the scene. The teen felt lighter, freer, and more confident. The officers returned to their vehicle, and the crowd dispersed slowly, their curiosity satisfied and their respect quietly evident. The tension that had dominated the street just minutes before had vanished, replaced with a sense of order, safety, and calm. The teen looked at his mother once more and smiled. She returned the smile with a calm, knowing nod, silently reminding him that she would always be there to guide and protect. The lesson was clear: presence, experience, and calm authority can change the course of events, turning fear into security and confusion into clarity. After the tense exchange, the mother guided her son a few steps away from the officers, but she stayed close, always keeping a watchful eye on both him and the surroundings. The teen felt a deep sense of relief as the tight knot of fear in his chest began to loosen. Just moments ago, he had been gripped by uncertainty, wondering if he would be understood, if anyone would believe him. Now, with his mother by his side, all of that began to fade. She looked at him calmly, her expression steady and reassuring. "It's all right now," she said softly, her voice carrying the confidence that only comes from experience. "They understand the situation. You're safe." The teen nodded, feeling gratitude swell in his chest. He couldn't fully put into words how much it meant to have her there, handling the situation with such authority while keeping him calm. The officers, meanwhile, had stepped back slightly. They were no longer questioning him, no longer skeptical, and their posture had shifted to one of acknowledgement and understanding. The lead officer spoke again, this time with a tone that carried more respect than before. "We appreciate your patience," he said. "It's clear now that there was a misunderstanding." The mother nodded politely. She didn't gloat. She didn't assert superiority. Instead, she focused on resolving the situation thoroughly, making sure no loose ends remained. "I'm glad we could clarify everything," she said. "I want to make sure that there are no lingering questions and that my son can continue on his way safely." Her words were calm, professional, and firm. The officers seemed to respond positively, realizing that escalation was no longer necessary. The teen watched the interaction quietly. He was learning something important about how conflicts could be resolved without confrontation. He noticed how his mother maintained control not through anger or aggression, through calm authority, clear communication, and presence. It was a powerful lesson, and he felt a sense of pride in her. She wasn't just protecting him physically. She was guiding the entire situation toward understanding and fairness. Once the officers had confirmed that everything was clear, the mother turned her full attention to her son. She gave him a reassuring nod and gestured for him to start walking. He followed, feeling lighter with every step, the weight of anxiety and fear gradually lifting. People on the street watched them leave, some nodding quietly in respect, recognizing the professionalism and composure she had displayed as they walked away from the scene. The teen felt compelled to speak. "Mom, thank you," he said quietly. I don't know what I would have done without you." She smiled softly, not overreacting but acknowledging his words. "You did the right thing by staying calm and calling me," she said. "That's what mattered most. You stayed composed, and that made it easier for me to help." The teen nodded, reflecting on the moments before she arrived. He realized how easily fear could take over, how quickly a situation could escalate when he felt powerless. But he also understood that having someone experienced and calm could completely change the outcome. It was a lesson he would carry with him forever. They continued walking toward home, the streets gradually returning to their usual rhythm. The teen noticed small details he hadn't paid attention to before: the sounds of children playing in the distance, the soft hum of cars passing by, the faint smell of food from a nearby bakery. The world seemed lighter now, almost as if the tension from earlier had lifted completely. Along the way, his mother talked quietly, explaining what had happened from her perspective. She highlighted how misunderstandings occur, how situations can escalate without warning, and how remaining calm and clear-headed can make a significant difference. The teen listened intently, absorbing every word. He felt empowered by her wisdom, understanding more deeply the importance of patience, clarity, and respect in tense situations. The mother also emphasized personal safety, making sure he understood how to navigate interactions with authority figures in the future. She didn't want him to live in fear, but she wanted him to be prepared, aware, and confident. The teen appreciated her guidance. He realized that her instructions weren't just about avoiding trouble, they were about understanding human behavior, communicating effectively, maintaining composure even when situations seemed intimidating. As they reached their quiet neighborhood, the teen noticed how familiar and comforting it felt. The earlier incident had made the street seem tense, unfamiliar, and intimidating. Now, walking alongside his mother, he saw them with new streets filled with neighbors going about their day, familiar houses, and the gentle rhythm of normal life returning. He felt grateful for safety, for guidance, for the calming presence of someone who cared deeply. The mother paused briefly near their home, turning to face him. "Remember," she said, "sometimes things happen that we don't expect. People may act out of misunderstanding or fear. What matters is how we respond. Stay calm, stay aware, and trust that there is always a way to resolve things without unnecessary conflict. Her words resonated deeply with him, reinforcing the lessons he had already begun to understand from watching her handle the situation with the officers. The teen nodded, absorbing her words. He felt a sense of maturity growing within him, a realization that life could present challenges and that fear, while natural, could be managed with thoughtfulness, patience, and the support of trusted guidance. He understood that courage was not just about physical bravery, but about maintaining composure, making thoughtful decisions, and trusting in the people who had his best interests at heart as they stepped inside their home. The teen finally allowed himself to relax fully. The warmth and safety of familiar surroundings helped dissolve the remaining tension from the encounter outside. He looked at his mother, feeling gratitude once again. She had protected him, guided him, and taught him lessons that extended far beyond the events of that afternoon. Sitting down, the teen reflected on what had just happened. He realized that even though the encounter had been frightening, it had also been a moment of growth. He had learned about calmness under pressure, the power of clear communication, and the importance of having someone experienced to guide you in challenging moments. These were lessons he knew would stay with him for the rest of his life. The mother sat nearby, quietly reviewing the situation herself, making mental notes about what had transpired, what could be improved, and what lessons could be applied in the future. She did not dwell on fear or anger. Instead, she focused on clarity, understanding, and preparation. Her calm and deliberate approach reinforced the sense of safety and security her son felt. The teen realized that moments like these, though frightening in the moment, could be transformative. He had experienced fear, confusion, and uncertainty, but he had also witnessed authority, guidance, and professionalism that turned a potentially negative situation into a positive, empowering one. He understood that real-life challenges could be opportunities for growth and learning when faced with the right mindset and support. Throughout the evening, the teen continued to reflect on the encounter. He replayed the events in his mind, noticing how his mother's calm demeanor had influenced everyone around her, how her presence had prevented the situation from escalating, and how her guidance had kept him safe. He felt a sense of pride, not just for himself, but for the lessons he had absorbed from her example. The mother encouraged him to talk about his feelings, to process the anxiety and tension he had experienced. They discussed how misunderstandings happen, why it's important to remain calm, and how communication can resolve conflicts. The teen listened closely, realizing that the encounter outside had become a learning experience that extended far beyond the immediate situation. By the end of the evening, the teen felt a sense of closure. The fear and uncertainty had been replaced by understanding, calm, and a newfound respect for his mother's abilities. He realized that while life could present unexpected challenges, the right approach, guided by experience and composure, could resolve nearly any problem. The mother and son shared a quiet moment, the bond between them strengthened by the events of the day. He understood that she was more than a parent. She was a mentor, a guide, and a protector. Her actions had taught him lessons in courage, composure, and the power of calm authority. That night, the teen went to bed with a sense of security and gratitude. He thought about the afternoon, the tension, and the resolution. He realized that the world could be unpredictable, but with the right guidance, challenges could be navigated safely and effectively. The lessons he had learned would stay with him forever, shaping the way he approached difficult situations and interactions with authority figures in the future. The next morning, the teen woke up with a mixture of relief and reflection still lingering in his mind. The events of the previous afternoon felt almost surreal, as if they had happened in slow motion and yet too quickly to fully process. He lay in bed for a few moments, thinking about how fragile normal life can feel when something unexpected happens. One moment he was walking home from school, earbuds in, enjoying the afternoon, and the next, he was surrounded by officers questioning him. He thought about the fear he had felt, the knot in his stomach, and the way his mind had raced for solutions. And then he thought about his mother, how quickly everything had changed once she arrived. Her calm, authoritative presence had completely shifted the dynamic, transforming a tense and frightening situation into one that was safe, controlled, and resolved. He realized that her intervention had not just prevented potential trouble, it had taught him a life lesson he would never forget. The mother was preparing breakfast, her movements efficient and steady. She noticed her son coming down the stairs and offered him a reassuring smile. "Good morning," she said simply, as if nothing extraordinary had happened the day before. But he knew better. He knew exactly how extraordinary her actions had been, how much her calm authority had influenced the situation, and how much he had learned just by observing her. He sat at the table, still quietly processing everything. "Mom," he began, "I've been thinking about what happened yesterday. I understand now why you told me to stay calm, and I see how much difference it made that you were here." She nodded, pouring a cup of coffee for herself, and gestured for him to continue. "It's strange," he continued, "how quickly fear can take over. One moment I felt trapped, and the next everything felt safe just because you arrived. It's kind of amazing." She smiled gently, acknowledging his words. "That's why preparation, awareness, and composure are so important," she said. "Fear is natural, but it doesn't have to control your actions. You did the right thing by staying calm and reaching out. That's what made my intervention possible." The teen nodded, absorbing her words. He realized that the events had changed him in subtle ways. He felt more aware of the world around him, more mindful of how situations can escalate, and more confident in the knowledge that even when things seem uncertain, there is always a way to regain control through calm, thoughtful actions. Later that day, he walked through his neighborhood again, this time with a different perspective. Every street corner, every passing car, every passerby reminded him of the incident. But instead of fear, he felt clarity. He thought about how quickly assumptions can be made, how easily misunderstandings occur, and how important it is to approach situations with composure. The experience had given him insight into human behavior and the value of patience and clear communication. Throughout the day, mother and son continued to discuss the events in detail. She explained the way misunderstandings often arise, how authority figures sometimes act out of caution or incomplete information, and how the presence of someone experienced and calm can de-escalate tense encounters. The teen listened carefully, asking questions and sharing his perspective. Realizing that the discussion itself was part of the learning process, he reflected on the crowd of neighbors who had watched from a distance. Their whispers and glances, though minor, had reminded him of the power of public perception. He understood now that situations are not only influenced by those directly involved, but also by the people observing. The way his mother conducted herself had not only reassured him and influenced the officers, but it had also quietly earned the respect of those around them. By the evening, the teen felt a profound sense of gratitude. He thought about the potential outcomes had his mother not arrived. Had he reacted differently, or had he panicked? Each possibility reminded him of the fragility of the moment, and yet he also felt empowerment, knowing that the right actions can transform even frightening situations into manageable ones. They sat together, reviewing the lessons of the day. The mother emphasized that life is full of unexpected events, and while fear is natural, it can be managed with patience, observation, and trust in those who have the skills and experience to guide you. The teen understood this deeply. He felt that he had gained more than just a story to tell. He had gained practical wisdom about composure, communication, and trust. Later that night, as the teen prepared for bed, he thought back on the specific moments that had stood out to him. The fear he had felt, the questions the officers had asked, the subtle shifts in their demeanor once his mother arrived. Each detail contributed to a clear picture of how tension could be resolved with calm authority. He realized that the incident, though stressful, had been a lesson in resilience, awareness, and the importance of having guidance in critical moments. The mother checked on him before he went to sleep, giving him a reassuring nod and a quiet smile. "You handled yourself well," she said. "Remember what you've learned. Stay calm, think clearly, and always know that support is there when you need it." He nodded, feeling a sense of closure and safety. He understood that the day's events, while intense, had ended positively because of preparation, composure, and trust. In the days that followed, the teen noticed subtle changes in his own confidence. He approached school, friends, and even routine interactions with a heightened awareness. He realized that while fear and uncertainty are inevitable, they do not need to control actions or outcomes. He carried with him the lessons of the encounter, the value of calm presence, the importance of clear communication, and the reassurance that someone experienced can provide guidance. When things seem uncertain, he also reflected on the human aspect of the incident. The officers had acted according to what they believed was necessary at the time, but they had also been influenced by the calm, authoritative presence of his mother. He understood that even those in positions of authority can respond differently when guided by facts, professionalism, and respect. It was a lesson in empathy, perspective, and understanding human behavior under stress. As the teen grew more comfortable, he began to share parts of his experience quietly with close friends, emphasizing the lessons he had learned rather than the fear he had felt. He wanted them to understand that situations like this can happen, but with calmness, trust, and clear thinking, they can be managed safely. He realized that his story could serve as guidance for others, illustrating the importance of staying composed and seeking help when needed. Weeks later, the memory of the afternoon remained vivid, but it no longer carried fear. Instead, it was a reminder of resilience, preparedness, and the protective power of those who care. The teen understood that while life may present unexpected challenges, he had tools, now composure, awareness, and trust that would allow him to face such moments with confidence. One quiet evening, sitting together at the kitchen table, the teen and his mother reflected on the journey. She reminded him again that calm authority, clear communication, and trust are essential not only in extraordinary situations, but also in everyday life. He listened attentively, realizing that the lessons of that day extended far beyond the encounter with the officers. They were lessons about life, relationships, and handling uncertainty with poise. As he prepared for bed, he felt a sense of peace. The fear and tension that had gripped him were replaced by understanding, insight, and gratitude. He knew he had been fortunate to have his mother's guidance, but he also knew that he had contributed by staying calm, following instructions, and communicating clearly. The experience had taught him that courage is not the absence of fear, but the ability to act thoughtfully and confidently despite it. That night, as the teen drifted to sleep, he reflected on the full scope of the events, the fear, the tension, the intervention, and the resolution. He understood that life could be unpredictable, but with calmness, guidance, and trust, challenges could be transformed into lessons and opportunities for growth. He felt a quiet strength, knowing that he had faced a difficult situation, learned from it, and emerged wiser, calmer, and more confident than before. The story of that afternoon would remain with him forever, not just as a memory of fear, but as a story of trust, resilience, and the power of calm authority. It would serve as a reminder that, even in the most uncertain moments, preparation, composure, and support can turn a frightening encounter into a transformative life lesson. And in that quiet, reflective moment, the teen knew that he had not only survived a difficult situation, but had gained something far more valuable, a deeper understanding of courage, wisdom, and the enduring strength of family and guidance.